Over on Jaguar Gator 8, a new college football video is out. In this video, we talk about the 1986 Aloha Bowl between Arizona and North Carolina, and how Arizona's defensive coordinator called a fantastic game while blind, being unable to see anything due to an eye infection. Click the card in the upper right corner to watch. And join me tomorrow night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern, where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes. Link to play below. And now, on with our feature presentation. If there's one thing you can say about head coach Tom Coughlin, it's that he is not forgiving at all. If you make a mistake that is foolish, that is stupid, and that costs your team, you will be on the next flight out of town, especially if said mistake involves not being able to hold on to the football. In 2000, we saw that with running back Chris Howard, who made the first start of his career against the Baltimore Ravens, and fumbled twice, getting cut later in the week because of his poor play. If you want to learn more about that disastrous performance, click the card in the upper right corner. And that whole incident definitely showcased how tough and how demanding Coughlin can be. However, when you look at Chris Howard in that game, there are a few reasons why Coughlin was justified in cutting him. Number one, that was his first start, so it's not like he had a good sample size beforehand. Number two, fumbling was a major concern for him when he first signed in 1998 from the Denver Broncos in the preseason, as he fumbled 5 times before getting cut there. It's the old saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Some people are just who they are. In other words, Howard had his opportunity and he blew it, and was showing no improvement on his biggest flaw. 2 years later, Tom Coughlin was about to cut someone else over another fumble. But what makes this one weird is that the man he cut had never muffed a punt before in his life. He never muffed a punt in high school. He never muffed a punt in college. He never even muffed a punt in the NFL, and was one of the better punt returners in football the year before. Yet, just like one kiss is all it takes for Dua Lipa, one mistake is all it takes for Tom Coughlin to send you packing. In the 2002 season opener between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Indianapolis Colts, Jaguars punt returner Damon Gibson was about to make a mistake so costly that not only did it cost his team the game, but it sent him out the door. And this is the story behind the costliest mistake and punt return in the over quarter-century-long history of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Before we talk about the mistake in question, we need some context to understand the importance of this game, how it was going, and perhaps most importantly, how the career in question for the player in our story was going. It's September 8th, 2002, and to open up the season, we have an AFC South matchup on our hands down in Jacksonville between the Indianapolis Colts and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Obviously, this is a big game, not just because it's the season opener, and you always want to start the season off on the right foot, but because this was a divisional game, so to be able to take control of first place to start the year off and get that advantage in the tiebreaker would be really important. From the onset, this was expected to be a close game, with the Colts being favored by 3.5 points, and it looked like Vegas knew what they were talking about, because this game was a true back-and-forth affair from the moment that it kicked off. On the opening drive of the game, the Jaguars cross midfield, but are forced to punt it away, as the drive stalls on the 43-yard line. Now, why the Jags in no man's land, and with the Colts having what seemed like 6 in the box, did not decide to hand it off and needing 3 yards, since you would think it would be 4-down territory, I don't know. But regardless, when the Colts get it back, Peyton Manning does what Peyton Manning does best, and drives down the field with ease. The Colts face 4 third downs on this drive, and they convert all 4 of them. And eventually, they're rewarded when Manning hits Quadre Ismail on a 6-yard touchdown to give the Colts an early 7-0 lead. It's a long, exhausting 15-play drive that would be answered by Jacksonville going on a long drive of their own. This drive took up around 10 minutes, and consisted of 16 plays, with Fred Taylor getting the bulk of the work on the drive, getting the ball handed to him 7 times. As a side note, to learn more about the great career of Fred Taylor, click the card in the upper right corner. When Mark Brunell hit Pete Mitchell on an 8-yard touchdown, the game was all tied up midway through the second quarter. Seems kinda crazy. 22 minutes into the game, and there had only been 3 drives total. The bad news for the Colts was that on their next drive, they would walk away with absolutely nothing, as even though they went on a 5-minute drive that consisted of 10 plays plus a field goal attempt at the end, Mike Vanderjagt's 33-yard try was no good, as it was blocked by the second-year defensive tackle, Marcus Stroud. The good news for the Colts, however, was that the missed field goal may have been a blessing in disguise, as a few plays later, Mark Brunell got intercepted by Marcus Washington, who took it 40 yards to the house for a pick-6 touchdown. At halftime, Peyton Manning had only stepped onto the field for 2 drives, and the Colts were leading it 14-7. Things weren't looking good for the Jaguars at all. They couldn't stop the Colts from moving down the field whenever they got the ball, and the Colts were getting the ball to start the second half. If the Jags were going to do anything and start their season off with a bang, they needed a strong start to the third quarter, and that's exactly what they got. The Jaguars forced the Colts to punt on their opening drive of the half, and then, even though the Jags went 3-and-out on their opening drive of the half, punter Chris Hansen was able to flip the field tremendously, as he had a 64-yard punt that, when combined with a holding penalty on the Colts, flipped the field from the 18-yard line of Jacksonville to the 9-yard line of Indianapolis, a 73-yard difference. Then, after Edgerrin James fumbled the football on the next drive, the Jaguars capitalized with 3 points to make it 14-10. And then, after Marcus Pollard fumbled the football on a drive after that, making it 2 straight drives ending in a fumble, the Jaguars capitalized on the great field position, as Mark Brunell threw his second touchdown pass of the day, with this one being an 18-yard dime to Patrick Johnson to give the Jags their first lead of the day and their first lead of the season. Jacksonville had all the momentum, and the crowd was feeling it. And when the Colts got the ball and went 3-and-out, thanks to an 8-yard loss on a sack by Paul Spicer on Peyton Manning, it felt like everything was going Jacksonville's way. 4 drives for the Colts in the half, and they hadn't crossed midfield, had turned it over twice, and had lost the lead. All that had to happen here on this punt was for the Jaguars to cleanly field it, get possession back, send a gassed Indianapolis defense back onto the field in the hot Florida sun and swamp weather, and possibly blow this game wide open. And that's where a man by the name of Damon Gibson enters our story. Because little did he know that by stepping on the field, that he was about to lose his job forever. Let's briefly talk about who the man back there was to field this punt. He's a returner by the name of Damon Gibson, and he had been playing professional football since 1998, so this was his 5th year as a pro, with most of those years being in the NFL, although he spent some time in NFL Europe in 2000 and in the XFL. In 2001, he was Jacksonville's primary punt returner, fielding 38 punts. In fact, he was so good and so reliable, or Jacksonville was just that thin a punt returner, that he returned all 38 punts for the Jaguars that season. In 2001, there were 31 teams in the NFL, since the Houston Texans wouldn't join until the following year in 2002. Of those 31 teams, 29 of them had multiple men return a punt over the course of the season. Just 2 trusted the same punt returner all year. Just 2 had the same man back there to field every punt. You had the Denver Broncos, who had Deltha O'Neal, and you had the Jacksonville Jaguars with Damon Gibson. And for all intents and purposes, Gibson was a pretty solid return man. Was he anything special? No, not by any means. However, he was a fairly solid right in the middle of the road return man, averaging 8.8 yards per return. But perhaps the most important quality that a return man can have is his ability to hold on to the football. All you really want out of a returner is, can he catch the football, and can he hold on to it? And despite Gibson fielding a whopping 38 punts in 2001, which was tied with Tiki Barber of the New York Giants for the 4th most in the NFL, he muffed a grand total of 0 punts. You knew exactly what you were going to get when you put Gibson back there to return a punt. You were getting a guy who would hold on to the football, and who wouldn't do anything stupid that would jeopardize the team in any way whatsoever. Which brings us back to this game against the Colts. Time for Gibson, who returned every punt for the Jags in 2001, to do the same in 2002, and return this one to keep the momentum on Jacksonville's side. Roll the tape.
Hunter Smith had a couple blocked in 99. He's back to punt right now. 4 years out of Notre Dame. Deep back, Damon Gibson. That's a line drive boot, which is going to whistle over the head of Gibson, who retrieves it on a ball. He lost the ball, and it's loose at the 19, and picked up by the Colts, we think, and then maybe regained by Jacksonville, but they say it is the Colts' ball, as Clifton Crosby was down there in a flash, and the young Damon Gibson coughed it up And a vital turnover for Jacksonville, we think.
Yikes. That's all I can really say about that one. Yikes. Of all the ways to play a punt, this might be the worst one out there. Heck, this might legitimately be the worst fielded punt I've ever seen in my life. Error number 1, letting the ball go over your head. Error number 2, looking up instead of looking down at the ball, so your focal point is all off. Error number 3, trying to field the punt on the bounce. And then error number 4, upon seeing the defender close by, you still try to scoop it up and make a run for it, instead of just falling on the ball and living another day. Literally everything that could have gone wrong on this punt did. This was a catastrophe. If you had to write a paper on what not to do on a punt return in no less than 800 words, you could just write it on this single play and be totally fine. It was a clinic of what not to do. And look, as a Jaguars fan, I have seen my fair share of special teams gaffes. This is up there with the worst one of them all. And sure enough, that mistake was all it took to flip the game completely back in favor of the Colts. Any momentum that the Jaguars had, and any belief that the fans had that they were going to win this season opener, was completely tossed out the window after this muff. The Colts capitalized on the error when Peyton Manning hit Quadri Ismail for a 12-yard touchdown, which was his second touchdown catch of the day. And then on the ensuing drive, the Colts scored another touchdown, with Manning hitting Marvin Harrison this time from 3 yards out to give the Colts a 28-17 lead, marking the first 2-possession lead by either side in the game. A late touchdown and 2-point conversion from Jacksonville was not enough, as when the final whistle sounded, the Colts were victorious, having come into Jacksonville and having defeated their new division rival 28-25. And it's undeniable that the momentum swung on that abysmal punt return. And for Tom Coughlin, that punt return was inexcusable. Again, this was the first mistake of Damon Gibson's entire career. He had never muffed a punt before in his life. High school, college, the pros, never. That was the first one, but it was a big one. And the muff punt and the error was so big that after the game, Coughlin announced that he was cutting Damon Gibson. The man who returned every punt for the Jaguars in 2001 was never going to wear the black and teal again. He was never going to suit up for this team in the 904 ever again. Now, Coughlin said that Gibson's release had nothing whatsoever to do with the muff punt, and that it was purely coincidental. He said that he cut Gibson because he wanted to add speed to special teams and add another linebacker, since he had 6 receivers on the roster. However, I'm going to call a complete bull on that, because considering literally everything we know about Coughlin, including what he did 2 years before in 2000 with Chris Howard after his 2 fumbles against the Ravens, this seems like a made-up excuse that, quite frankly, I'm not sure why you'd make, since I'd assume it would be better to put your team on alert that ball security is everything than to make up this lie that no one believes. Number 1, Coughlin said after the game that Gibson was part of the reason why they lost. Coughlin said, "It's real easy to analyze and understand how the game was lost. The story of the game was turnovers, carelessness. I have a hard time with that. Gee, I wonder who that could be about." Number 2, the day after the game, Coughlin still decided to berate Gibson in the press conference, saying, "I'm upset. It's something that happened that didn't have to happen." Number 3, he flat out said that he was non-committal about whether he'd even have a roster spot after that play, saying, "I'll think about that situation today and tomorrow, and that's as far as I'll go." And again, number 4, you literally did this 2 years ago to a player who fumbled the football. We all know why you cut Gibson. You're not cutting a starter who you trusted enough to return every single punt for you last year just because you want more depth. You cut him because of this play, and everyone with a brain knows that. Gibson said that he wasn't concerned about the incident, saying that since he came into the league, he's never been one to look around the corner and worry that someone's going to cut him. But the damage was done. Gibson was off the Jaguars, and after playing a few games with the Atlanta Falcons later in the 2002 season, he would never play in the NFL again. Meaning that for many people, especially Jaguars fans, this is his lasting legacy. One of the worst muff punts ever from an execution standpoint. This is one of those rare moments where a guy truly lost his job over one play, and one play only. It wasn't a bad game, or a series of events, or a few bad plays. It was one singular bad play that did him in. because 5 seconds before that play, he seemingly had one of the most secure jobs on the entire team. It takes years to build a career, and only one moment to destroy it. And safe to say, in 2002, Damon Gibson found this lesson out the hard way. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL Trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at Jaguar Gator 9. To see college football videos, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. So you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.